so far we've seen how spatial model works, why OLS breaks down when we deal with spatial data, and what the main spatial models look like. This paper focused on convincing and helping regional scientists incorporate spatial modeling into their analysis. It's a little bit different from the other readings, but it gives us some great ideas, and it does drive home how to use these spatial models. So regional science studies the interaction between places. That's one way you can define the field. These interactions between places include things like labor markets, housing markets, tax competition, migration, knowledge spillovers, tons of things. Standard econometric models assume independence across observations. I've said this in like every video trying to drill this into your head because this is the way that we have to approach these models. Regions are not independent, and if space matters in the real world, spatial econometrics are going to matter in your model. It's not like the idea that we have to control for a specific variable in a simple regression. So they emphasize that spatial dependence is often structural. So spatial analysis isn't correcting an error or fixing a nuisance. This is a modeling mechanism. So if your outcome variable is a count starting from 0, you're not going to use OLS. That's not going to work for your data. You'll use a Poisson model to fit your data. Here, because we have a relationship between the different observations, we're not going to use a simple OLS model. We'll use a spatial model to fit your data. So if you're estimating the impact of a minimum wage increase in one county on employment, you would see an effect in that county, but you would also see retail employment spillovers into retail employment in surrounding counties. You need a spatial model here to account for that spillover, and OLS will not work. So instead of choosing between spatial lag or spatial error, in this paper, they argue that we should use the spatial Durbin model as the default. Now, why is this the case? They say it allows us to estimate the direct effects inside the region, the indirect effects that spill over into neighboring regions, and even feedback effects that return back to the region through the neighbors. So the spatial Durbin model nests both the SAR model and the SEM model, so you don't have to decide which one is true. Now, in practice, I still do an LM test and choose the specific model. But that said, the spatial Durbin should really be our go-to, what we think would be the first model, and kind of test with the mindset that to see if one of the other ones would fit better. One of the most important points they make is that coefficients are not effects in spatial models. This is the same as the previous reading, that effects have to be calculated using the spatial multipliers. So if a policy increases jobs in one county, the true impact includes the growth inside that county, the direct effects, the spillovers into surrounding counties, the indirect effects, and then the further feedback if neighbors kind of go back into and affect the original policy or polity. This is why spatial econometrics is so important for policy coverage.